FBI research published in 2017 revealed that a relationship between victim and slayer was not known in 50% of cases, but that in those that were known, only 9.7% were committed by a stranger. 28% were committed by someone known to the victim, such as a neighbour, friend or work colleague, and 12% were committed by a family member. In Australia, 2/5 of murders occurred within the family in 2003, with an average of 129 such cases per year. One of the rarest types was the killing of a parent by a child, with an average of only 12 murders per year. The majority of such murders are the result of fights between spouses or neglect of very young children. Most are unintended. Much rarer are planned killings of family, and often there is a financial motive for the killer. Oftentimes mental illness is a contributory factor. A case of a son killing his father in Poland in the late 1990s was remarkable for the planning and symbolism involved in the murder. It was deliberate and it was ghoulish in the extreme. The case was reported in Volume 22 of the American Journal of Forensic Medicine and Pathology in 2001. No names were given in the report. The murderer was a 26-year-old man of Polish heritage who had grown up in Russia. His family consisted of his mother, father, and a sister. The son later claimed his father had abandoned the family and fled to Poland. He said his father had seduced a woman 30 years his junior and a daughter of his own friend, and that he had feared retribution from their relatives. After the father had left, he provided no financial help to his family, who were destitute, despite the man being quite wealthy. This abandonment and neglect nursed a resentment in the son, which ultimately instilled thoughts of murder. The son eventually moved to Poland, where initially he lived alone, before moving in with his father and grandfather. He studied medicine at university for a year, switched to psychology for 3 years, and then dropped out. At the time of the murder, he was unemployed, spending his time reading. Apparently inspired, in part, by the movie Seven, which was released in 1995, he planned to punish his father with a ritual death. He later explained that it was to be a work of art, illustrating extreme human meanness, and an act with no holds barred. The son lured his father to the cellar of their home, and with a sharpened screwdriver he assailed his father, stabbing him 15 times in the neck and chest. He also used a stun gun to attempt to electrocute the man, which failed. The man died from blood loss from the stabbing. Taking his father's corpse, the young man tied the legs to a window frame and hung the body upside down, with the shoulders resting on the floor. This was to symbolize crucifixion on an upturned cross. Using a surgical scalpel and a shovel, he decapitated his father, not only because he wanted to use the scalp, but because he said that the head of this kind of scoundrel should not hang even on a devil's cross. He further stated that a man's worth can be recognized in his values rather than on his face. As his father, in his opinion, never recognized any values, scalping him symbolized his lack of face, and freed the body from the presence of the head, since the head was guilty of everything. He also made deep incisions at the backs of his father's knees, and collected the blood in buckets. It's not revealed what, if anything, he did with the blood. Taking the head and neck which he had severed from the body to his room, he spent the rest of the night scalping the skin away from the skull. Once he had finished with it, he threw the head outside into the garden, referring to this act during questioning as throwing away the weed. Taking the scalp, he sewed the skin together where it had been cut, and dried it using salt. Once his flesh mask was prepared, he draped it over his own shaved head, using sticky tape to help keep it attached. Having fixed it in place, he dressed in his father's clothes put on his father's hat, glasses, and scarf, and left home. He went and sat on a bench and waited. He wanted to see if he could fool his grandfather into believing that he was the dead man. In a while his grandfather approached, and the killer began talking to him, pretending to be his own father. Presumably due to diminished eyesight, the old man fully believed he was speaking to his son, and the pair even ate breakfast together before he noticed anomalies which caused him to doubt what was happening. The grandfather searched the house and discovered the body in the cellar. He phoned police from a neighbor's house, but before they arrived, the killer discarded his scout mask next to the body and, dressed in the clothes his father had worn the day he had murdered him, left the house. He did not go far, but concealed himself nearby and watched the activity of the investigators at the house. He then sat at a bus stop and was arrested later that same day. Psychiatrists who examined the man assessed him as having a borderline schizoid personality, which under Polish law meant that he was considered to have limited understanding of his acts and ability to control his behavior. The penalty was not disclosed, but he was presumably sent to a medical facility for treatment.